Our gospel reading for this morning comes from the 24th chapter of Luke. Luke here continues the story of that first Easter day. Listen for what the Spirit may speak to us through these words. Now on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the third day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them all the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening, and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at table with them, he took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. On the day of that very first Easter, 2 disciples head to the village of Emmaus. No one knows exactly where that is. Various locations have been suggested, but none is certain. Perhaps it's just as well. In our day, Emmaus has become a metaphorical destination, one associated with spiritual awakening. You can find various retreats and opportunities labeled Emmaus walks. And there's one particular intense 3-day weekend retreat for spiritual renewal and formation called Walk to Emmaus, a Protestant adaptation of the Catholic Curcio movement. But in Luke's gospel, I don't know that Emmaus is a destination at all. It may simply be a place to spend the night on the way somewhere else. A stop on the road away from Jerusalem, away from pain and betrayal and death and loss. These disciples are not on a spiritual journey. They're on a journey away from the cross and the grave. They are still hurting. They're in shock and stunned. They are still grieving their loss. They don't know what it is that they need. They just know it's not in Jerusalem. Some of you know that I'm one of many mourning the death from COVID-19 of singer-songwriter John Prine. And there's a line in one of his songs I've played a lot lately that could easily have been uttered by these two disciples. Just give me one thing that I can hold on to believe in this living is just a hard way to go. Curiously, these two disciples have already heard the report of women who went to the graveyard that morning. They've heard about the empty tomb and an angel who says that Jesus is alive. But it has not mattered. I don't know if that's simply about men not believing the word of women, or if it's just that their feelings of grief and loss are so overwhelming that nothing can break through that. But whatever it is, they're headed to Emmaus, to anywhere but Jerusalem. In his book, The Magnificent Defeat, Frederick Buechner writes, "There is not one of us who has not gone to Emmaus with them. Emmaus can be a trip to the movies just for the sake of seeing a movie, or to a cocktail party just for the sake of cocktails. Emmaus may be buying a new suit or a new car, or smoking more cigarettes than you really want, or reading a second-rate novel, or even writing one. Emmaus may be going to church on Sunday. Emmaus is whatever we do or wherever we go to make ourselves forget that the world holds nothing sacred, that even the wisest and bravest and loveliest decay and die, that even the noblest ideas that people have had, ideas about love and freedom and justice, have always in time been twisted out of shape by selfish people for selfish ends. Emmaus is where we go, where these two went, to try and forget about Jesus and the great failure of his life. Emmaus is the place where we spend much of our lives, you and I. The place that we go in order to escape. A bar, a movie, wherever it is that we throw up our hands and say, let the whole damn thing go hang. It makes no difference anyway. I suppose we need to update Buechner's more than half-century-old words for our time, a day of distancing when we can't go to the movies or a party or bar. Perhaps our Emmaus is binging Tiger King, Ozark, or Outlander. Perhaps it's just opening another bottle of wine and watching cat videos on the internet. Racked with grief, regret, and hopelessness, two disciples head to Emmaus, talking about all that had happened, all that had been lost back in Jerusalem. But along the way, Jesus comes and walks alongside him. They don't recognize him, though, and they share with him what they've lost. We had hoped that he was the one. I've read this story many times, but I don't know that I've usually paid that much attention to Jesus' initial appearance. I've hurried on to Emmaus, to Jesus going inside with them, joining them at table, taking the bread, giving thanks and breaking it. But none of that ever happens if Jesus doesn't show up in the first place. These two disciples do not plan to meet Jesus. Jesus is the last person they expect to meet. They're not looking for him. They're not hoping for him. They are simply leaving Jerusalem, trying to leave behind the pain and the hurt and the grief. But Jesus comes to them anyway. For many people, this time feels like something of an Emmaus moment for us. Things we counted on have failed. People are sick and dying. People have lost jobs and insurance. The response of the government at times seems inept, at times worse than incompetent. Uncertainty and anxiety are everywhere. Faith is a struggle for many. Why is this happening? Where is God? We can sing right along with John Prine, just give me one thing I can hold on to believe in this living. It's just a hard way to go. We can join in the lament of those two disciples. We had hoped he was the one. If you're feeling any of this, and I know that I am, it is perhaps comforting to realize that Jesus comes to people like us. If our gospel is any guide, Jesus comes to people who are not looking for him, who have given up on him, who are simply trying to get away and escape from it all, who have thrown up their hands and said, let the whole damn thing go hang. It makes no difference anyway. The risen Jesus, who knows all too well how hopeless the world can appear, comes alongside us, unrecognized, unseen. Surely that is a big reason Luke tells us this story, to let us know that Jesus does not wait for us to get it all figured out, does not wait for us to get our faith up to the correct level, does not wait for us to have a spiritual awakening. Jesus intrudes into our doubts, our feelings of hopelessness, and speaks to us. Although we usually don't realize he's there at first. We don't recognize him. It takes something. Bread broken and shared, a moment in worship, a vista that draws us up short, a note, a post, a meditation that touches our heart and opens us to the divine. And then we realize he was here. Oh God, open my heart. Open all our hearts. Let us catch a glimpse of the risen Jesus this day.